All right, we are on to our last slide, and I'm going to actually take 2 days to explain this to you because this last slide is pretty important. So it's your 3-minute video of your presentation. Okay, so what your goal is first, before you start filming your video, you need to actually write a script. Okay, so trust me on this one. Please don't skip this step. You need to actually write out what you're going to say. Now, it doesn't have to be word for word of what you're going to say, but at least write out some talking points that you can talk to in your 3-minute presentation, okay? So again, this is going to look a little bit different for each project. So I'm going to go over each project and give you some suggestions on what to do for this. If you are doing an experiment, if possible, you might want to film yourself doing part of the experiment as your presentation, okay? Now, if that's not possible, like if it's an experiment that took time over days, like I think of like Brock and Reese, they're doing how fast food molds over time. They wouldn't really be able to film their experiment because it took them weeks in order to get their data. But if your experiment is a quick experiment and you can do it again, that might be a good thing to include in your presentation. Okay. If your experiment is one that takes time and you can't refilm it, I would just talk about what you learned in your experiment. Okay. You could also go through each slide. And actually, I would definitely recommend going through each slide if you did an experiment and talk about your hypothesis, your procedure. You don't really need to talk about your works cited too much, your data collection and observations and your conclusion. I think it'd be really cool if you talked about each one of those slides in your presentation, okay? So remember to try to keep it under 3 minutes if you can. If you're entering the science fair, I think it's a rule that it has to be under 3 minutes, so just be aware of your time, okay? Once you've written your script, you might want to do a practice video and time yourself to see how long it takes and to see if you can get through it smoothly. Now, you don't want to be giving your presentation and reading something. That is always, not the best way to give a presentation. Now, if you have note cards and you have to like glance down a couple times, that's completely fine. But just make sure your eyes are not glued on your paper if you're reading something, okay? Or your computer if you're choosing to present from your computer. Okay. So kind of think of this as of a showcase presentation, right? Like when we did Colorado Day, you presented your information to your parents. So this is kind of like what your video is, since we can't be in person together. Now, if we were in person together, you'd come up in front of the class and you would explain your project to us. So think of that when you think of what's going to be in your video. Okay. All right. And then if you're doing a demonstration or research project, you're just talking about all that you learned to your audience. Again, I would go through each slide. Okay, so that's the wrong presentation. So start with your purpose, why you chose to research this. You can talk about any diagrams or charts that you have. Your works cited. You don't really need to talk about that too much, but you can mention it. You might want to read your report to us, or at least give us, you don't have to read it all, but give us some important points that you included in your report. And then you definitely want to talk about your conclusion or the summary of what you learned. Okay. So you're just kind of going through your slides for your presentation if you're doing a research project, and you're just telling us what you learned. Now, if you're doing an invention, this could look a little different. You could talk about the whole process you went through making your invention. Did you have any epic failures? Did you have to test out your invention? Did your test fail? There's a lot of awesome things you could put in your invention. Okay, so you guys might want to, again, go through each slide. So talk about your purpose when you're doing your video, any diagrams or charts you have. Works cited, you just have to briefly mention that. Oops, I'm on the wrong slide again. I'm sorry, invention people. So I'm sorry, ignore what I just said there. You're going to talk about your purpose and users, your process. So just like I was saying, your process is huge if you're doing an invention. Works cited, just briefly mention that, your diagram and project, and then your research summary, you can talk about that as well. Okay, so in your presentation, for all of you, just think like, what would you present to the class if we were in person together? Okay, you have 3 minutes. Make it good, make it exciting. You should be excited when you're talking about your project. That's always more fun to watch. And just make sure you have fun with it too, because this should be your passion, right? All right, get creative with these videos, but remember, you have to make a script first. You don't have to submit your script to me or anything. I'm just going to trust that you're going to do that. But please, this is in your interest. You definitely want to write out what you want in your video. You don't want to just go onto your video and start blabbering. Okay, so just make sure that you have a plan and you have a script of what exactly you want to say. All right, I can't wait to see your awesome videos. Remember, I'm going to give you time next week to actually film your video and everything. All you really have to do this week, I would recommend, is getting your script done. And then next week, we have a couple days to get your video uploaded into this Google Slide. All right, let me know if you guys have any questions.